welcome back to my channel. 모두 코리안의 소피쌤입니다. In today's video, we will be learning about some tips and tricks on how to memorize Korean vocab. So this will be a 3-part series, so please stay tuned for the other 2 coming up very soon. But otherwise, let's get started. Have a proper memorizing system in place. Now, it is a proven fact that the more effort you put into memorizing something, the more likely it is that you will actually remember it. I.e., when you want to remember a word, simply hearing it and writing it down somewhere in your notebook is never going to work. So essentially, if you want a word or anything else that you're learning to stick in your memory, you need to have a separate memorizing system. And when we say separate, this is not just writing it down somewhere in your workbook or somewhere in your notebook, but a separate actual system in place to help you memorize. A few examples of memorizing systems that you could use are flashcards, using a whiteboard, using different apps, using post-it notes, and we will talk about this in part 3 of this series. But you need to have something like this in place where you are purely focusing on memorizing these words. So I would highly recommend that you try out a few of these, okay? And we don't want to be half-assed. Or in Korean, we say 대충. 대충 means doing something kind of half-assed. So what you need to do is try out these systems properly. Put the system in place properly and really give it some time, right? Give it a red hot shot before you decide whether or not that system works for you. And this means you're doing it at least for a few weeks, if not over a month. And it would also be a good idea to have at least 2 of these systems running at the same time. So you're seeing these words everywhere you go. You have time out of your day where you're spent doing these systems. So you're being exposed to these words as much and as often as possible. Be picky with your words. You will never know every single Korean word, just like how you will never know every single English word, right? And it's not about knowing lots and lots of words. It's really about knowing the words you will use and you will need. For example, myself, I am an unmarried, childless Asian lady living in Australia, right? And so I don't care about words like school or frog or dinosaur, right? And it's not that these words are difficult or complex or super uncommon. It's really just the fact that they are not relevant to me. Okay, so when you come across a new Korean word that you've learnt and you think to yourself, what if I need to know this word later on? Then you can learn that word later on, right? You don't have to know it now. For now, especially if you're still just a beginner, just focus on the words that you are going to use today. And then you can grow your vocab list more and more from there on. Create a story. Okay, so once you have decided that this word is lucky enough to be added to your memorizing system, you want to create a bit of a word correlation story. Now, I will be honest, this is not going to be easy, and it will take a lot of practice and a lot of time, but I promise you it's worth it. So please try to do this with every single word that you want to memorize. Give it your best shot to try and create these stories, because this is what is proven to be the most, hands down, the most effective way to retain and memorize pretty much anything. So what you need to do is create a really short story about your word. Literally just a few words long, okay? Let's look at a few examples. Example number 1. The word for 7 is 칠, which sounds very similar to il, and the numericals also look very similar, til and il. Example number 2. The word for always is 항상. 항상. And if you look at how this word is written, the 2 little circles on the bottom look like an infinity sign. Always, 항상. And example number 3, the word for want to is 싶다, which sounds like ship, right? So you can think of this as being, I want my merch to ship. 싶다. Alright, do you get the gist? As you can see, these are just really short stories. They don't have to make sense. And in fact, you know, the more ridiculous they are, sometimes the more likely it is that you're going to remember them. So you're creating these little stories, and the important thing is that you don't forget the story. So once you think of this little one sentence, one line of story, you need to write down the story itself in your notebook. Comprehensive memorizing. Alright, last tip of today's video, Purple Angels, and that's the fact that we are memorizing words. So what I mean by that is that words have meaning, of course. Words have meaning. You know, they're not just a jumble of characters or a jumble of alphabet letters, right? They have a meaning to them. So a really useful way of memorizing words over, let's say, numbers is putting them into a sentence. So when you come across your word in your memorizing system, whether that was a flashcard or on your whiteboard or whatever it was, you want to try and put it into a sentence and not simply just go, this word means this, and then move on. Okay, so for example, today we learned the word for half-assed, right? 대충. So if you're still just a beginner, you can just do this in English. So you come across this word 대충 and you go, I am not going to be 대충 in my pronunciation today. Or you could say, I made my bed very 대충 this morning. So can you see that I am memorizing this word in a very comprehensive way, i.e. I am understanding how to use this word in a sentence, even if I'm just putting it into an English sentence. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, you can do this in Korean. But again, the key here is not to be overly complex with your sentences, because we want to use this time to focus on memorizing the word rather than grammar. Okay, so we don't want to take away our focus from that. So you might do something like 대충 하지마. 대충 하지마. Or 이거 너무 대충이야. Right, just really simple, basic sentences, just so I know how to use the word. Alright, Purple Angels, so that concludes part 1 of the series. Please look forward to part 2 coming next week. But in the meantime, here is a checklist of what you can do to get started on memorizing your Korean vocab. Alright, so if you found this video useful, please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you again next week. 다음 주에 만나요. 감사합니다.